Rome, 509 BC. The Tarquin family has ruled this city for the last 2.5 centuries. They're not doing a bad job overall, but they're definitely abusing the whole divine right to rule thing. I mean, it's not like Rome has been consulted on whether they want to be ruled by the Tarquins or not. And every now and again a Tarquin king will do something that makes the Roman people go, yeah, maybe a democracy might be better. Like, say, imprisoning your own son because he wrote a really juicy tell-all about the family. Or, raping someone's wife in broad daylight. Which brings us to today. Lucretia was having an unremarkable day. She was doing some shopping with her female slaves, and probably thinking about making eggplant parmesan for dinner, when she was stopped by Sextus Tarquinius, the most hated man in Rome besides, of course, the guy who invented eggplant parmesan. He was the son of King Tarquin the Proud, and had made the fatal mistake of impregnating a slave whom his father had forbidden him to marry. So, as one does, he'd killed her and was now looking for someone else to ravish. And given that Lucretia was married to one of the most influential men in Rome, he figured she would be a good choice. But then he noticed that her husband was out of town. So he decided to wait a few days and sneak into her house and rape her while she was alone. But don't worry, he was very considerate about it. First, he sent a note saying that he wanted to see her, and when she asked her husband's friend, Brutus, to go with her for protection, he told her that was totally not necessary. But really, it was because Sextus had brought a gang of armed thugs with him, and when they arrived at Lucretia's house, Brutus couldn't do a thing to stop them from breaking down the door and carrying her into a bedroom, where Sextus was waiting for her with a dagger in hand. Now, depending on the version of the story you read, either he ripped off her chiton, which was like a Greek dress, or one of his goons did it for him after he threatened them with a dagger. Then he raped her while the goons watched and made sure that Brutus could do nothing to stop him. And after he was done, he tossed her aside and strolled out of the house as if nothing had happened. Naturally, everyone in Rome was furious about this, especially because Lucretia's husband, Lucius, was out of town trying to put down a rebellion in and honestly, we can't really blame them. Being raped by an armed thug is pretty messed up, but the Romans took things a step further because they blamed the entire Tarquin dynasty for this. You see, ever since Rome became a monarchy about 250 years before this, there had always been tension between the kings and the people. Kings were generally expected to keep their noses clean and stay out of the affairs of private citizens. But every once in a while, they would overstep, usually by seizing property or interfering in business deals. And whenever this happened, the Romans would get all riled up and demand that the king back off. Usually, the kings would just ignore them until the people calmed down. But sometimes they'd throw a tantrum that even the gods themselves couldn't ignore. Like the time King Servius Tullius tried to reform the system of weights and measures. That was such a massive pain in the butt that even the gods had to intervene and fix everything. So throughout Rome's history, there had always been a simmering distrust of royal authority. And what happened to Lucretia was seen as the final straw. Not only had the Tarquin family shown how little they cared for the safety and security of Roman citizens, they had also insulted the entire concept of Roman marriage, which was supposed to be a sacred institution that the state itself enforced, and it wasn't just the commoners who were furious. Even the patricians, the aristocratic class whose loyalty to the monarchy was unwavering, knew that something had to be done. Lucretia's husband came home and immediately went to see his friend, Brutus, to hear her side of the story, and apparently she wasted no time telling it. According to Livy, she said, "I was going to the shops, and having got all that I wanted, I was returning home along the way. My slaves walking on either side of me, Sextus Tarquini met me, and though I resisted him with all my strength, dragged me away, overpowered me, and ravished me." After she finished speaking, she picked up a dagger and plunged it into her own stomach. Then she died, leaving behind a note addressed to her husband. In it, she explained what had happened to her and reminded him that he had a duty to avenge her death. Now, the stories differ on what happened next, but most accounts agree that Lucius immediately set about gathering allies to take action against the Tarquin. Some versions have him teaming up with his father-in-law, who was the head of the Lucci family, one of Rome's most prominent patrician clans. Other versions say that he went to talk to the other patrician families first and got their support before doing anything. Either way, he eventually found Brutus and asked him to swear an oath to avenge Lucretia's death. and, according to Livy, over 300 of Rome's most influential citizens joined the conspiracy, including 5 of the 8 members of the ruling class that made up the Senate. The conspirators lured King Tarquin out of the city by pretending that the Romans had declared war on the Etruscans and needed him to lead the army. While he was gone, they posted guards at the gates to make sure he didn't come back. Then they marched on the palace and demanded that Tarquin and his sons leave the city and never come back. When he refused, they tore down the royal standard, pulled down the Tarquin family's statue, and kicked them out anyway. Now, some versions have Tarquin being kind of chill about this, at least at first. He left the city without a fight and started his own dynasty in the nearby town of Laurentum, but other versions show him coming out swinging. According to Livy, he put up quite a fight, killing a few conspirators before he fled the city. Either way, the Tarquin family was out of power and the Republic was born. At least that's what most historians have traditionally said happened, but more recent scholarship suggests that things might not have been so simple. For starters, the story of the rape of Lucretia was written down nearly 400 years after it supposedly took place, which makes it potentially unreliable. Plus, the whole tale reads like a Roman propaganda piece. I mean, why does Sextus rape Lucretia, one of Rome's most respected women, when he could have just picked somebody nobody had heard of? Well, because he knew it would cause a major political crisis and depose his family's monarchy. And that isn't just a Livy thing. It shows up in other sources, too. Dionysius of Halicarnassus, for instance, says that Sextus knew perfectly well that killing Lucretia would start a revolt, but he did it anyway because he thought he could put it down, and yet none of the archaeological evidence seems to support any of this. We have no record of any major upheaval during this time period. There are no contemporary coins minted after the deposition of the Tarquin family, no inscription. If the Tarquinis were so unpopular, you'd think the Romans would have celebrated getting rid of them, but they didn't seem to. Instead, we find a coin minted shortly after the traditional date of the Revolution that still lists Tarquin the Proud as the King of Rome, and another one that celebrates the restoration of the Republic, but doesn't mention either Tarquin or Luke. It is almost as if the Romans didn't think that dethroning the king and raping a noble woman were all that big of a deal. So what gives? Why do we have this story of Rome's greatest revolution, but no evidence that it ever happened? Well, one theory is that the revolution didn't happen all at once. Instead, the rape of Lucretia may have just been the final straw in a long series of Tarquin abuses that finally pushed the Romans to revolt. There's no evidence of this, but scholars believe that the story of the rape of Lucretia was originally a folk tale that Romans used to explain the origins of their law code, and over time, it got incorporated into the official history of Rome. Or maybe the revolution did happen, but it didn't look anything like the Romans remembered it. Maybe there was no glorious march on the palace, no crowds of angry Romans ready to tear down the monarchy. Maybe the Tarquin family just quietly lost power and faded away. As the decades passed, the memory of their fall became distorted, until it turned into the legend of the rape of Lucretia. Or maybe we're just reading too much into this. After all, it's not like ancient history is known for its happy endings. Hey there, thanks for watching. Do you have any favorite ancient tales of wronged women seeking revenge? Let me know in the comments. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes.